In the land of Tamriel, wealth is something desired by almost everyone, from lowly beggars to the most powerful of emperors. People will do anything to acquire money, work, trade, kill, steal, other things. But in everyone's quest to become rich and powerful, there will always be someone at the top. To quote Qui-Gon Jinn, there's always a bigger fish. The richest of the rich. So this begs the question, who is the richest person in all of the Elder Scrolls? Hello my fellow hirelings of House Telvanni! I'm Neloth, and today we are going to be answering that very question in this very video. Before we begin, let me state, as always, that this is not a ranked video, so no one is in any specific order with the exception of the last individual I mention. Additionally, I will not be including any Elder Scrolls protagonists, as there is no canonical way to measure their wealth, as everyone's playthrough is different. And this isn't some OC dick measuring contest. I'd rather talk about actual characters whose wealth we can actually examine and speculate upon collectively. Lastly, we will only be talking about specific persons and not factions at large. How lame would this video be if I referred to a soulless corporate entity like the East Empire Company as a person and just ended the video there? With all that being said, let us start counting the gold and drakes of our contenders and secretly cry about how we can barely afford rent. Capitalism. Thonar Silver-Blood. Thonar Silver-Blood is the business head of the Silver-Blood family, who is the most wealthy and influential family in the Reach. Thonar is also the biggest asshole in the Reach. Thonar Silver-Blood may be the eldest brother that some see as a figurehead, but he mostly keeps out of business affairs and focuses on political affairs, which, if Markarth is controlled by the Imperials, means he just sits on his ass all day doing fuck all. Because of this, Thonar leaves all of the money business to Thonar, which is why he is mentioned in this video and not Thonar. Now, why is Thonar so rich? Well, he owns the treasury house where the Silver-Blood store all of their wealth and distribute their workers' pay. He owns the Silver-Blood Inn where everyone in Markarth goes to eat and drink. And most importantly, he owns Cidhna Mine, which is a prison mine where the Silver-Bloods send prisoners to mine as much silver as humanly possible. Cidhna Mine is basically the reason why Thonar is so rich. It produces half of the silver seen in Skyrim, and Thonar doesn't even have to pay his quote-unquote miners because they are just prisoners used as slave labor. Now, this already sets Thonar up for life, but this is only where his profit schemes begin. You see, the majority of the prisoners in Cidhna Mine are captured Forsworn, and the king of the Forsworn, Madanach, is also a prisoner in Cidhna Mine. Thonar created an uneasy alliance with Madanach, forcing him to send Forsworn agents to eliminate any competition Thonar might face. Not only that, but Thonar will also employ mercenaries to bully mining owners and other competitors into selling their land, like in Karth Wastein, where a mercenary named Atar attempts to force the mining owner Einathach to sell his land. Oh, and Thonar is so corrupt and so rich that he has basically bought off every single guard in Markarth as well. Now, while Thonar owns half the Reach and plans to take hold of all of it, squeezing out as much profit as he can through underhanded tactics, he does suffer from one weakness that likely makes him the least rich out of anyone else I mention in this video. Thonar, as well as his brother Thonar, are very isolationist. They despise the Empire and have thrown in with the Stormcloaks and don't seem to have any contact with anyone in High Rock or Hammerfell, despite their location. Because of this, they have likely missed out on many opportunities to expand their operations, unlike some of the other contenders. Maven Black-Briar. Maven Black-Briar is the matriarch and head of the Black-Briar family. She has no known husband, but she does have 3 children, Hemming, Sibby, and Ingen. Similar to the Silver-Bloods, the Black-Briars are the richest and most influential family in the Rift, and even has all of the Riften guards in her pockets. She is also the biggest asshole in the Rift, but she doesn't throw us in jail, so I guess she gets bonus points. Maven owns the largest and most successful meadery in Skyrim, the Black-Briar Meadery, and has strong ties to the Empire, Thieves Guild, and supposedly the Dark Brotherhood. However, a note in the secret room in Maven's house leaves me to believe that her ties to the Dark Brotherhood are a bit fabricated or embellished. Regardless, Maven uses her connections to the absolute max, including using the Thieves Guild to extort Arangoth and control Golden Glow Estate, which produces all of the honey Maven uses for her mead, raking in massive amounts of coin. Also, Maven uses the Thieves Guild to take out one of her competitors, Sabjorn, who owns Hunningbrew Meadery, turning Hunningbrew Meadery into Black-Briar West. Now, this is just speculation, but I also believe that Maven is in the business of breeding horses as well, as she keeps a breeding horse named Frost that is highly sought after by many people, including a man named Louis Latruche. Unlike the Silver-Bloods, Maven Black-Briar maintains many connections inside and outside of Skyrim. In the quest Diplomatic Immunity, we can even see Maven being invited to the party at the Thalmor Embassy and mingling with the many Jarls, members of the East Empire Company, and even the Thalmor themselves, indicating she likely does business or is attempting to do business with all of these individuals. There is also a note in Maven's house written by the Grand Steward of Imperial City Trade Relations, talking about shipments of her mead in Cyrodiil. While this note sounds more boring than going through a dungeon in Daggerfall, it indicates that her market for Black-Briar mead does not end in Skyrim. So, Maven may not own as many businesses as the Silver-Bloods, but her meadery likely rakes in a lot of coin, especially given that Nords love mead. On top of all this, the Silver-Blood family lives inside their own treasury house, meanwhile the Black-Briars own 2 separate mansions, one inside of Riften and one outside. There is also a 3rd mansion that Mercer Frey lives in that Maven likely owns as well, given she ran the previous family out and just gave it as a gift to Mercer like it's a fucking sweet roll. Maven Black-Briar is without a doubt extremely rich, and likely has a better head for business than the Silver-Blood family. But there is one last individual based in Skyrim that I wish to talk about: Erikur. Erikur is a businessman and a Thane that resides in Solitude, the richest city and the supposed capital of Skyrim, and big surprise here, he is also an asshole. Unlike the Silver-Bloods and Black-Briars who own their own family business, Erikur makes his profits through trade and by being the spawn of Molag Bal himself, also known as a landlord. Erikur owns many of the properties in Solitude, including most of the businesses like Radiant Raiment, and consistently raises their monthly rent in order to amass more and more wealth. On top of this, Erikur's sister, Gisli, mentions that he owns a warehouse that brings in a good revenue stream. She is likely referring to the East Empire Company warehouse, which means that Erikur might own a stake in both the warehouse and likely the East Empire Company itself as well, which is a very wealthy trading company backed by the Emperor himself. Erikur also involves himself in many shipping deals as well, including buying elven weapons from Black Marsh and selling them to the Imperials or Stormcloaks, just depends on who's paying more. It also appears that his shipping deals are not always legitimate either, which surprises fucking no one, as he has made deals with the pirates of the Dainty Slode and the Red Wave crew, smuggling Azura only knows what. Erikur also maintains many connections similar to Maven Black-Briar. He integrates himself with the Thieves Guild when they become powerful enough, and he is also invited to the Thalmor Embassy to socialize with Jarls, East Empire Company merchants, and the Thalmor as well. Now I think it's time we move away from Skyrim and focus on other individuals in Tamriel and beyond that have amassed untold amounts of wealth. Janus Hassildor. Janus Hassildor is the Count of Skingrad, which is arguably one of the richest and prosperous cities in all of Cyrodiil, due to the city offering the most refined houses, but also because the city's crime rate is extremely low. And while a bit standoffish, Janus isn't that much of an asshole. On top of the city of Skingrad seemingly being extremely wealthy, it is also home to two very well-known vineyards, Sur Isle Vineyard and Tamika Vineyard, which produce the majority of the wines as seen in Cyrodiil. These factors likely contribute to Janus raking in a great deal of wealth from the taxes of its citizens and businesses. On top of all this, Janus's castle, Castle Skingrad, is the largest and best looking out of all of the other castles in Cyrodiil, which further reflects his incredible wealth. Now, Janus does harbor a dark secret, and that secret is that he is secretly a vampire. Because of this, he is almost never seen in public and has a longer lifespan than most other counts due to, being a vampire. I would argue, however, that Janus's vampirism is a boon to his wealth, as he no longer ages and can collect taxes indefinitely, which is terrifying when you think about it. Additionally, he does not require food to survive, meaning he does not have to spend a great deal of money on food and just needs one really good servant to feed on every once in a while. Lastly, because the Elder Scrolls is filled with wizards that live for hundreds of years, both man and mer, Janus could easily spread rumors that he is a powerful wizard himself, and no one would really question his very long lifespan. Who knew that being a blood-sucking fiend could be so profitable? However, unlike the previous individuals mentioned, Janus is not obsessed with the accumulation of wealth. Rather, he wishes to be left alone to govern his town in the shadows, and also find a cure for his wife, who did not take to vampirism as he did. Divayth Fyr. Divayth Fyr is another contender for being the wealthiest in all of the Elder Scrolls. However, unlike everyone else, I feel a great majority of his net worth is in assets and not exactly liquid, but let me explain. Divayth Fyr is a 4,000-year-old Telvanni wizard that typically resides in his own mushroom tower he grew called Tel Fyr. Now, Divayth Fyr is not an active member of House Telvanni, acting more as a consultant than a magister. However, even with his respect, position, and lifespan that is longer than any empire, he has likely amassed untold amounts of gold. Additionally, Divayth Fyr is a collector, and likes to acquire powerful and valuable artifacts. He frequently collects dwarven artifacts that are worth a great deal to smugglers, as they are outlawed in the Septim Empire. However, he also has many Daedric artifacts that he has acquired over the years that are worth a significant amount of gold, including Volendrung, Scourge, and Savior's Hide. During the Second Era, he even acquired the Skeleton Key as well. On top of all this, Divayth Fyr wears a near complete set of Daedric armor, excluding the helmet. Now, the value of armor sets is very inconsistent and varies widely with each game, but in Morrowind, the armor an individual wears is a status of wealth, and according to an Orcish smith named Garoth Mukgro Muzgoob, we'll just assume I said that right, Daedric items are the most rare and expensive in all of Tamriel. So if we look solely at the logic and lore of Morrowind, Divayth Fyr is likely the richest in all of Morrowind and even beyond, because there is no one that has a set of Daedric armor like he does. Even Orvis Dren, the Dunmer who is the kingpin of the Kimona Tong and makes a great deal of money off of crime and slavery, only has a pair of Daedric greaves and a Daedric shield he gave to his bodyguard, Galos Ferethi. Divayth Fyr may not be as liquid as some other people, but his assets more than make up for it. Additionally, similar to Janus Hassildor, Divayth Fyr is far more interested in his hobbies and experiments than that of wealth. Oh, and yeah, Divayth Fyr can sometimes be an asshole, but in the events of Morrowind, he is pretty chill. King Orgnum. King Orgnum is the Aldmer/Maumer ruler of the island kingdom known as Piandonia, an island continent located far south of Tamriel. In legend, Orgnum was already a wealthy Aldmer nobleman when he made his mark on history, and he used his wealth to launch a rebellion against the rulers of the Somerset Isles. However, this rebellion was likely a spectacular failure as he was banished to Piandonia. Now, notice I said that King Orgnum is both Aldmer and Maumer, as lore would indicate that King Orgnum was around when the first of the elves began to settle Tamriel back in the Merethic era. This would make King Orgnum older than Divayth Fyr, since he was already wealthy when he was first mentioned in history. Who knows how much wealth he amassed from being a king and raiding the inhabitants of southwest Tamriel for so long. According to lore, not only is Orgnum seemingly immortal, but he grows more youthful with each century, and he is granted this immortality through either magical rituals and sacrifices or through vampirism. In legend, Orgnum was the first person on Tamriel to ever work silver, which is likely where he originally amassed all of his wealth. Now, not only is he an immortal king of a continent and one of the first silversmiths, but he also has an artifact that cements him as one of the richest people in all of the Elder Scrolls. You see, King Orgnum at one point had a coffer in his possession called King Orgnum's Coffer. Now, while the name is uninspired, what the artifact does is truly inspirational, as it will create gold from nothing. Let me rephrase this. King Orgnum had a coffer that generated limitless amount of gold from thin fucking air. This means that King Orgnum, on top of all his other profits, had an object that gave him unlimited profits, which he utilized to purchase a massive fleet he used against the Septim Empire. Unfortunately, the coffer was lost to Orgnum in a sea battle against the Emperor Antiochus Septim. However, even with his lost wealth, he was still at one point likely richer than anyone else on this list. Sadly, there is barely any concrete information on King Orgnum and his wealth, so he simply cannot be granted the title of richest person in the Elder Scrolls. I also don't really know if he's an asshole due to lack of information. Before we get into who I believe is the richest individual in all of the Elder Scrolls, I want to give an honorable mention to Vidam Dren. Vidam Dren was the Duke of Vvardenfell and Grand Master of House Hlalu. Not only does being the Duke of Vvardenfell likely entitle him to many profits, including owning a great amount of land that he sells to rising members of great houses, but he is also the Grand Master and ruling leader of House Hlalu, which is a house of merchants and individuals dedicated to making profits. And when one is the Grand Master of House Hlalu, that Grand Master is entitled to take as much ebony or as he wishes from any Hlalu-owned mines, which in Morrowind's economy equates to ludicrous amounts of fucking money. On top of that, he is also related to Orvis Dren, the kingpin of the Kimona Tong, who owns many slaves that work on his massive plantations. Because of this relation, Vidam likely gets a cut of such profits. Additionally, Vidam Dren is one of the few people we meet that wears an almost complete set of ebony armor, and similar to Divayth Fyr with Daedric armor, ebony armor is only worn by the wealthiest of individuals. Although this could still mean that Divayth Fyr is richer than Vidam, but I'm willing to bet that Vidam is more liquid than Old Man Fyr over here. Now, the only reason Vidam Dren is an honorable mention is for two reasons. One, we don't really know what the title of Duke really entails, and if he gets profits from that position, as many Dunmer say that the King and Dukes are imperial titles that mean very little in Morrowind. And two, after the Oblivion Crisis, Morrowind leaves the Empire, meaning the Dukes and the King, are no more, and also House Hlalu is no longer recognized as a great house and falls from grace, as it should, and House Hlalu likely lost a great deal of profits afterwards. If Vidam survived the Oblivion Crisis, he likely lost a great deal of wealth and would then no longer be considered the wealthiest. Unlike most of the other contenders in this video, Vidam is not an asshole and seems to want what's best for Vvardenfell. I mean, yeah, he engages in slavery with his brother, but he is also aware of his daughter trying to liberate slaves and allows her to continue such underground railroad activities. And now, it is time to name who I believe is without a doubt the richest, the most wealthy, the 1% of the 1%, and the greatest capitalist of all time! Tiber Septim! Tiber Septim is a guy that some of you may be familiar with, as he did some things like, conquer all of Tamriel, putting Riemann Cyrodiil to shame, and becoming a god, putting, everyone else to shame. In all seriousness, though, Tiber Septim was the founder of the Third Cyrodiilic Empire and Emperor of all Tamriel. Many say that Tiber Septim was so great and his deeds so legendary that when he died, he ascended into the heavens and sat next to the other Aedra, becoming a god and the ninth divine, Talos. Although some attribute his divinity to his use of the Numidium, a massive brass god, or achieving a state of Kim, but enough about apotheosis, let's talk about some money! So, Tiber Septim was able to control and rule all 9 provinces of the Empire, which entitled him to more profits from taxes in a year than Maven Black-Briar could make in 3 lifetimes. One book even refers to the taxes Tiber Septim receives as tithes, which is a 10% of annual earnings. Typically, this refers to contributions to religious organizations, but I'm inclined to believe that each of the 9 provinces pays Tiber Septim, or rather the Empire, 10% of whatever they make in a year, which is ludicrous. On top of this, Tiber Septim acquired untold amounts of wealth from other means aside from taxes. like the rich sources of ebony in Morrowind that he took full advantage of, and steep tolls along Imperial patrolled highways. Because Tiber Septim profits from the ebony trade, it is also reasonable to assume he profits from other trading as well, including trading in dwarven artifacts, which Tiber Septim's empire had monopolized on, because according to the Imperial charters, all dwarven artifacts were property of the Emperor. Meaning, if this charter was put in place by old Tiber Septim himself, his net worth increases exponentially from all that dwarven tech. On top of all the evidence and context clues that I believe prove he was the richest person in all of the Elder Scrolls, the book, The Arcturian Heresy, literally states that when Tiber Septim died at the age of 108, he died the richest man in history. A title and statement that has never been given to anyone else in all of Elder Scrolls lore. This basically confirms without a shadow of a doubt that Tiber Septim was the richest person in all of the Elder Scrolls. Now, you might ask, is Tiber Septim also an asshole? Well, in order to avoid a bunch of Skybaby Talos worshippers breaking down my door, crucifying me, and calling me a knife ear in my knife-like ears, I will simply say, no comment. Although he had an affair with Queen Baron Zaya and allegedly forced her to get an abortion when he found out she was pregnant with an illegitimate child. And that's all I wrote! A video where I analyze and attempt to figure out who is the richest person in all of the Elder Scrolls. This was slightly difficult, as analyzing the economy in the Elder Scrolls is as reliable as a Slode is a good parent, so I had to make many assumptions and heavy speculation with certain characters. Because of my assumptions, I would definitely like to know who you think is the richest person in all of the Elder Scrolls down in the comments, but I do warn you, if you say an Elder Scrolls protagonist, all of your wealth is subject of House Telvanni. I don't make the rules. So with all that being said, make sure to like the like button, like the subscribe button, and like the bell notification down below to be updated on future videos. And I will see you whenever the fuck I decide to upload again. House Telvanni be with you.
Please, O hero of Skyrim, I shall be ever so grateful.